Good evening everyone. I've just realised my white balance is completely off on this. I will apologise, this is going to be a quick one today because I am feeling terrible. Also looking terrible. So, good evening everyone. This is Reading for Charity. We're reading for this time around for the Archie Foundation. It's a fantastic charity. Works with sick kids in the North East of Scotland. I've said this at the start of every single one of my videos. You can go look at any of the other ones if you're interested. The link to them is in the description of the video on YouTube and on Twitch. It's a brilliant charity. I'm proud to support them. They do really, really good work, and hopefully, you know, me or my family will never need their services. That's going to be putting it. So, today's review is Song for Susannah, book 6 in the Dark Tower. Now, the Wolves of Calla I really enjoyed, and hoped they were going to be going forward with more good stories in the same vein as that. Not so much. He's backtracked a little bit. I don't think Stephen King can be massively consistent with his output. There's a few things that... We'll start with the negatives. First of all, any book that breaks the fourth wall as badly as Stephen King's broken it in this deserves to be called a bad book. Stephen King essentially has added himself to the story as God, in a kind of meta... you know, when the author meets his own characters in his book, you know, it's a sign that the author is out of control, and an editor really needs to step in and assert some control. We had that a little bit with Callahan in the last book when we had the you know, Stephen King's name being mentioned in respect to Salem's Lot with Per Callahan, and it just gets worse in Song for Susannah, where sorry, I'm feeling dreadful today. Where Eddie and Roland end up on Earth, you know, a version of Earth, the 19th level, I'm guessing is what they're probably calling it. And they meet Stephen King and they talk to him, persuade him to, or Roland hypnotises him into continuing the books, or starting them in general, because at that point he's not really even read The Gunslinger. He's not even released The Gunslinger, though he has written it. So first things first, that's a terrible, terrible, terrible way of doing a book. It's and the reason why he's done this is he spends a good maybe 100 pages of this book telling the reader how clever Stephen King is. All the intertextual references that he's put in, all the little hints back to songs and films and stories, and you know, all the other little references that he's added to create the previous books. And I hate that. I hate an author that feels like he has to call attention to the fact he's been clever. And he even jokingly calls in the book, he jokingly calls some of his readers I think it's clodhoppers he calls them. You know, readers who aren't intelligent, and you kind of feeling, oh, you're showing a little bit of disrespect for your readers there. You know, not only are you calling, maybe it seems like you're calling them jokingly clodhoppers, but then you go away and actually explain how clever you are to them, and then it just feels a little bit like disrespect. It didn't sit well with me, and I don't actually feel there's much point to it. It doesn't add anything to the story, not really. I mean, if by now that you hadn't cottoned on to the fact that everything's connected and everything intertwines in the Dark Tower's world, and you know, everything bleeds from one to the other, and they're kind of not quite parallel worlds, but almost parallel worlds, all up and down the tower. If you've not got to that by now, then you know, you've probably given up the series already. If you've made it to Song of Susannah, you probably know what's going on. And to have that kind of beaten over your head, no, it's not necessary, not even remotely necessary. So yes, continuing on for Song of Susannah, the things I didn't like. So we got over the problem Wolves of Calla that Stephen King had with strong female characters, or the lack of them in the story, and he solved that in Wolves of Calla with the Sisters of Oriza. But he's going to fall backwards again by having some dreadful Japanese stereotypes with full on with super racist speech. It's the tourist with the cameras on the neck. It's the thing that was satirised so much better in by Pratchett with this tourist. He satirises that kind of person well. Stephen King just turns it into a racist stereotype, which is sad. I remember the one thing I was going to say about the being clever. Stephen King doesn't need to beat you over the head with how clever he is. The example I was thinking of when I was thinking about this earlier was Neil Gaiman and American Gods, which is over there somewhere. Neil Gaiman is super clever in that book. The way he writes Shadow all the way through the book, and there's little hints towards what Shadow actually is going to be, or is, or could be, or has the potential of, etc, etc, etc. And then when the event happens, again, I'm not trying to spoil any book, but when the pivotal moment happens with Shadow near the end of the book, you go, oh, of course, it all makes sense now. And you go and you think about all the moments back through the book, and you're like, yes, I can see the parallel. Yes, I can see the parallel. You're right, okay, I understand now. That's so clever. That's so clever. It's so good. And you feel happy because you've discovered the clever for yourself. You've seen it for yourself. And Neil Gaiman leads you to it, but doesn't beat you over the head with it. And that's a really good way of doing it. And Stephen King hasn't got that at all in Song for Susannah. It's like he's standing there at a party going, I'm so clever and I can do this, that, and the other thing, fourth thing, and not letting, I'm rambling. It annoyed me. It really seriously annoyed me. And it could have been done so much better. And other authors have proved that you can do it so much better. Yes, we've talked about the racist stereotypes. Now, the central part of the book, two central parts of the book. One is the pregnancy of Susannah, of which is the founding part of the last, probably 2 books, because it's not. It's not rounded off at the end of Song for Susannah. I still amn't sure why Susannah's needed, other than a single throwaway line that one of the birds uses. That Susannah needed to be it because she's essentially Roland's sister. And it's like, okay, so the child needs to be born in an incestuous fashion, but they're clearly not, regardless of, and again, this is the bit that Stephen King uses all the way through the books. Even if you want to invoke Ka, and use the Ka-tet to say that, Roland's the father, Eddie and Susannah are the children, and Jake is, some sort of weird surrogate of all 3 of them, it still doesn't work, because the incestuousness would then be Eddie and Susannah. The whole idea of the way they're making it, if you follow down the path of thought, of the logic, it continually falls down. I don't understand why they need Susannah, because the string of logic doesn't match. And would it not be just much easier to just get Mia pregnant and let the baby be delivered, or just let Susannah have the baby and let it be delivered? It's bewildering that you have the situation that comes up, and it doesn't feel like anyone participating has thought through what's actually going on. And I know narrative causality drives books, but it needs a sense of logic behind it as well. And I don't think the logic is particularly apparent in the whole Susannah pregnancy bit. He removes Susannah's agency by making Mia stronger, so Susannah has no real ability to affect matters until until all the way through the book, in fact. Mia drives everything. And even then, even after Susannah's been told to hold up Mia as long as possible, she still meekly, sorts out the taxi for them. If she just sat and went, nope, get a taxi yourself, work it out, she would have delayed her much longer. The Susannah's character is completely subsumed by the requirement of the narrative to get her to the last castle. And it's frustrating. It's really, really frustrating. Because Susannah is the kick-ass character. If anyone should know the inside of Susannah's head, it's Susannah. I mean, she has Odetta, Det, and Susannah living inside her. They, together they should be strong enough for Mia not to matter. Mia has never had a real body up until very, very recently. She shouldn't be able to have that ability to keep control. It's frustrating and it doesn't work, and for many, many reasons. And I will continue ranting about this at length. The other side of it is it's a really tired old trope that you've seen so many times in so many things. Susannah becomes the damsel in distress. She is the the quintessential helpless maiden. Other than the fact that she's knocked up, so therefore can't be maiden. But she has literally made helpless by the causality to fit, by the narrative to fit the causality that's enacted through the book. And that's frustrating as well, because Susannah is not that character. She shouldn't be meekly just being pushed from pillar to post by Mia and by the Crimson King. She should have more fight in her, because that's Susannah's thing. She has the fight in her. All the way through, she has the fight in her. So that's hugely frustrating as well. It's also, it's not particularly fantastic. So you could chop out, again, this isn't the longest in the series. This is only 420 odd pages. You could cut out 300 pages of this and still be fine. Pretty much there's almost no need for Jake, for Eddie and Roland to be in Maine. There's just none. There is, New England, isn't it? There is absolutely no need. The whole section with Depenew, and Tower and Stephen King himself could all be chopped out completely. Again, a side book if you want, things that went on while we were there. But in terms of the actual story, there's absolutely sod all in this book that serves the actual story. The story of them getting towards the Dark Tower. So, at the start of the book, Mia is off with Susannah's body. And by the end of the book, Mia is still off with Susannah's body. And nobody has gotten any closer to that. In reality, in the book, Jake and Callahan have burst in to the pig, and I like the way it ended on that note. That was quite good. It was obviously referencing Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. The way they kind of throw open the doors, charge in, screaming, and fade to black kind of thing. But the But the actual content in terms of the story is there's really not much there. Everyone finds their way to the places they need to go through the doors, and then they kind of Jake and Eddie. Oh, I keep calling them Jake. Roland and Eddie are basically taken out sideways, and everything they do in this book is pointless. Everything they do in this book is completely pointless. Because all they do is get a bit of paper signed by Tower that the sale will go through of the lot. That could have taken 5 seconds and 3 pages. In all honesty, it could have and should have. There's absolutely no need for all those scenes. Per Callahan and Jake, all they really do is go through the door to New York and immediately follow Susannah to the pig. That's all they do, and they burst in, and that's where the scene ends. They have absolutely sod all as part of the book. It's the story is lacking, and there's lots and lots of filler, and it's really frustrating because I like the world. I like the Dark Tower world that Stephen King's created. I like the character of Roland. I like Susannah and Eddie and Jake and Per Callahan. I really, really like the characters. I really, really like the world, and it's frustrating to see the actual story being subsumed to Stephen King wanting to show how clever he is and writing about something that's not the actual story. It feels like it's a testament to writer's block, which is just, write any old shit, just keep going, and eventually you'll get back to what you actually need to write about. Frustrating. Good points about this book. The world continues to be good and interesting, and the idea of there being kind of one key plane, one key level of the tower where when things happen, they kind of happen for real, and everything else is just reflections of that, is a nice idea. If you've ever done any role playing, we would call that the prime material. It's been in D&D since the late 60s. You know, and it's interesting to see the idea pop up elsewhere. But it's nice and it's comforting and it's normal to see that kind of these things. So that's good. That's nice. That's fun. I love the world. But the story itself in this book, it's not there. It annoyed me. It annoyed me how little story there was in this book, and how much of it was Stephen King patting himself on the back for being really clever and calling his readers stupid. It really did. So yes, I will stop ranting now. I've been going for 15 minutes. I feel terrible, which is probably making me grumpy, which is probably leading me to complain about the book even more. Yes. I have 2 conversations going with 2 different people on the question of the prophecy. Now, I haven't been able to Google this because I don't want to capture any spoilers for myself for The Dark Tower, for the last book. But the prophecy around Mordred killing Roland. Now, I'm sure the prophecy states, and I hunted all the way through this book, I couldn't find the page, and I wasn't going to spend any more time trying to find it. I'm sure the prophecy states that Roland is last of the line of Eld, and that Mordred is to kill him. So, the thought occurred to me when I was in the car earlier, if Mordred is Roland's son, wouldn't that make Mordred last of the line of Eld, not Roland? Surely having a son means that, they are the one that continue your bloodline, and I'm fairly sure Roland states in one of the early books that he has the blood of Eld flowing through him. Can follow his lineage all the way back. So, as can all the gunslingers and the families. So, if that's the case, then Mordred has the blood of Eld flowing through him. Therefore, Roland isn't the last. I had someone have a counterpoint towards me, thank you, Gillian, that maybe that was referring to gunslingers, and that the last of the Eld could be described as Roland being the last gunslinger, and that's potentially true as well. But the only person around to train gunslingers is Roland, and Roland has trained Eddie and Susannah and Jake to be gunslingers, and he calls them gunslingers, to their faces and to everyone else. And even in his internal monologues during the Wolves of Calla, he refers to them as gunslingers. He thinks of them as gunslingers. And there's no one else to, say nay to this. So, if he's denoted them as gunslingers, then there's gunslingers. So even if he dies, then the last of the Eld still hasn't gone, because you have those 3 carrying on being gunslingers, being the line of Eld, if that's the route you want to take. So once I finish The Dark Tower, I'm going to go back and look and see if that is actually genuinely a mistake. But that did occur to me as well, that there might be a mistake in the prophecy. I might have just misread it and misunderstood it, but I couldn't find it, and I'm not going to Google it because I don't want spoilers for the book. Yes, so anyway, enough. Song for Susannah, should you read this book? If you're reading The Dark Tower, get it out of the library, don't bother buying it. You can skip massive chunks of this book. The second everyone goes through the door in the Cave of Voices, you can pretty much skip to near the end. Once you get hold of Jake and Per Callahan. Everything else in between serves the book and the story no good whatsoever. It reiterates things you already know, and it's just Stephen King telling you how clever he is. Yeah, that's how I'm summing up the book. Okay, so next time will be the conclusion to The Dark Tower, The Dark Tower itself. I would normally hold up the book, but it's sitting next door. That will be Sunday, hopefully. I would normally be reading it tonight, but I am feeling so terrible, I'm going to have an early night and skip the reading. This has been the biggest chunk of reading I've been getting done to try to get us through this, and I think I just need a little bit of sleep. So hopefully Sunday for The Dark Tower. If not, it'll be next week. So fingers crossed for Sunday. So yes, once again, this is reading for charity. We're reading for the Archie Foundation. It's a fantastic charity that helps the children in the northeast of Scotland. They do really, really good work. I'm proud to support them. I'm proud to be raising money for them. And if you've got a spare couple of quid sitting in your pocket, because I know it's pretty much payday, toss it their way. It's a really, really good thing to do. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching. And look, I will speak to you all again on Sunday. Good evening.